Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Donald Grodoff, family coach with FamilyOCD.com and FocusedHealthyFamily.com. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast series, I delve into the hidden characteristics of OCD, anxiety, and anxiety disorders. The things that most people don't see, that are behind closed doors and shut within the mind about anxiety. My goal with these podcasts is to bring about awareness of obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. Understand that I am not a doctor, therapist, or counselor, and the content, information, resources, and ideas that are talked about and brought up here in these podcasts are things that I have used, discovered, or have been recommended to me, and I always recommend to seek additional professional help in finding solutions for yourself. Thank you for listening and enjoy the podcast. This podcast was recorded January 18th, 2018. And this is an off-the-cuff podcast, so there's no number to it. But I wanted to put out something that I've been thinking about. Lately, I've been listening to Abraham Hicks. A lady's name is Esther Hicks, who channels a group of from a different dimension called Abraham Hicks. Now, this may throw you off a little bit as far as this whole idea of channeling, but I just really have enjoyed listening to her and the wisdom that comes out of her mouth. She is the one, Abraham Hicks, this whole group has been the one that have really worked on the law of attraction. I don't think they came up with that idea, but I think they have really emphasized and worked on it and spread that idea of the law of attraction. And the more I've done the work on it, the more I really have found a solid belief in it myself because I've seen it in action. And so what I want to talk about today is I'm calling this the Jinx and the law of attraction. And I'll explain why. But first, let me talk just a little bit about what she says, what Esther Hicks kind of says about the law of attraction. She says that, our thoughts and the words we put out are the creators of what we want. And I really believe that we create from the brain, from the mind. And she talks about the law of attraction. What we, for those of you that know the Bible, know the saying, what you sow, so shall you reap. Well, it's the idea of what energy you put out is the energy that you will get back. And I see it all the time in my practice when I'm working with clients. I see that, people are miserable, and so everything that's coming to them is miserable. And as we change their energy and raise their energy to a better, higher level, I guess you'd say, and they're feeling better about themselves, they're feeling happier, they find that at the same time, they start attracting things to them that are like that make them happy, that help them to be in that better place. People that they want to know, that are like-minded, things that they've desired start showing up in their lives. And I know this not only from my clients, but in a personal way. And I'll give you just one example of how it has kind of proven out to me. And it was a very interesting scenario that I went through, or my wife and I went through, I guess you could say, this is about 2012. Before that time, I had always in my mind really kind of dreamed of I wanted a station wagon. Now this is a material thing, so just understand that. There's other things I have drawn from the law of attraction that weren't just material things, but this was a material thing that I had been thinking about for a long time. I shouldn't say a long time, probably a couple of years. We have a van, and of course, as a younger man, I've never dreamed of us having a van. But when you get a family, you get a van. And so we had a minivan, and we were happy with it, and I really liked it. It was a good car. But I wanted something that was family, but also kind of fun and sporty. And so I had envisioned in my mind, what I envisioned was I wanted a Honda station wagon, like an Accord station wagon, or possibly a Civic station wagon. That's what I had placed in my mind, that I wanted a sporty, kind of a sporty car, but I wanted something maybe that was a station wagon that, we still, whenever we go somewhere, we're always taking a lot of stuff. We got dogs and animals and all that stuff. So I wanted something that had some utility to it, but I also wanted to have something that was fun. And I also had put in my mind that it would be really cool if I could find a car that had a stick shift. My wife and I had a car a couple of years ago that was a stick shift, and I actually taught my wife how to drive a stick shift. And she and I both really enjoyed it. And the car, we ended up trading it in, getting a different car, and got an automatic after that. So we had all automatic cars. And so I had this in my mind, a station wagon, and I kept thinking, well, it'd be kind of cool if there was if it was a stick. But I knew that was probably a tough combination, because stick shifts are getting harder and harder to find. Not too many people want to drive a stick anymore. Anyway, like I said, I had been thinking about that probably for a couple years since we had gotten rid of the stick shift. Within a short period of time, I started thinking about getting another stick because I really enjoyed it. And so, 2012, my wife gets into a car accident with our. At that time, we had a Honda, not a Accord, but a Civic, and it got totaled out. It was a used car, but it was a really nice little car, and so we had to, we had to look for another car. We had to get another car, and so one day I was talking to my mechanic. My mechanic he's a car broker, so he goes to auctions and he does all this stuff, getting cars and selling them, I think, online, besides his mechanic business. And so I was talking to him one day, and I said, yeah, I really wanted to get, I want to get another, we're looking to get another car. We had the accident, totaled it out. It was really bad and all this kind of stuff. And he said, well, I got something, but I don't know that you're really going to be interested. Now, you can already probably assume what's going on here, but I'll tell you. He said, I got something you might be interested. It might help you to, at least get by until you find what you really want. He said, but I don't know that you're going to like it. And I said, well, what is it? And he goes, well, one, it's kind of like a mini station wagon. It was a Mazda. Oh God, now I can't think of the name of it now. But it's a little station wagon type of car. And I said, well, no, that I actually have been thinking about it, getting a station wagon. So that's really good. He goes, yeah, but I know this other thing, it's going to really throw you off. You probably are not going to want it. So I don't know. I said, well, what is it? And he goes, well, the darn thing is a stick shift. And I went, are you serious? And he said, well, yeah, why? He said, well, that's exactly what I've been looking for. And so he said, well, yeah, so I think I met back with him another day because the car wasn't there at the time we were talking. And he brought it to a shop, and I came up and I took a look at it, and it was wild. It was almost perfect to what I was wanting, except it wasn't a Honda, but it was a Mazda. It's a Toyota Matrix, and it was great. It was a little station wagon, a little sporty looking thing, had sport wheels to it and everything, and it had a stick shift. In fact, it was a 6-speed stick shift, which are extremely hard to find. Not that I wanted necessarily a 6-speed or anything like that, but it was really unbelievable. And I said, oh my God, that's perfect. And I sent pictures back to my wife, and she liked it and said, yeah, that sounds good. She liked the idea of being back into a stick a little bit to play with. So it was really unbelievable how Now, it took me, 2 years, probably, maybe a year and a half, to get that to manifest. But still, that's how, a lot of people would call that a coincidence, and I don't think that's true. I think we bring to us what we need. So it was a kind of an amazing thing, and that's not the only time that kind of situations happen. So it's been pretty interesting to see this stuff, working. And so and what I find, and the reason I think it finally came to me is because I really had cleared my mind of, and this is what I want to talk about, of not thinking about what we don't have. And let me kind of explain that a little bit. One of the things that Esther Hicks talked about in her talk, this last couple of weeks, a couple of talks I've listened to, she talked about when we put out a desire in our life, if we put out something we want, the universe automatically and almost instantaneously brings it forth, puts it out there. But she says what happens, she calls it the vortex. It's kind of like it puts that idea, that desire, into a bank for you. And she said that all you have to do to be able to get it is come into equal vibration with the vortex, or come into an alignment in your mind with that desire, with that bank of desires. Again, this may sound really off base, but I just found it pretty fascinating. And so when she was talking this week, at what she started talking about, she said the reason that we're not getting the things that are in our, because the universe has already produced it for us. It's there waiting for us just to call it forth. The reason we don't pick it up or don't get it to come into our life is when we think about that, the majority of us think about the negative of it. We think about, I really want this car, but I don't have the money, or I don't have it. And we focus more on what we don't have than on the desire of what we want. And so we are so focused on that negative that it just keeps it away. And so it's aligning your mind on what you truly want versus what you don't want or what you don't have. And I find this in myself. And I find that what, the process of creating it and bringing it forth will happen, but the longer it takes to do it is the fact that the longer we stay on the negative or on the opposite of what we want. And I found that to be true. The quicker and the faster that I can focus without putting my mind on what I don't have, or what the negative is, or I don't have the money, or I don't this, or don't that, or don't this, or don't that, the faster I get it when I'm focused on what the desire is instead of the not. And so when I was thinking about that, the idea of, it just came to my mind. I don't know what we were doing. We were putting something together, and something we didn't have. And my wife said something about do something, and I said, "Oh, don't jinx it by saying that." And then I started thinking about the idea of jinx. How many times we put out there, don't say that, you'll jinx it. And what I think that does to us in our mind, speaking based on what Esther Hicks came up with, is that as soon as we say, "Oh, don't jinx it." So again, I think I've talked about this in podcasts before, but we have a hard time. Our mind has a hard time hearing and understanding negatives like don't and no, things like that. And so when we say, "Don't say that," or "Don't jinx that," what we do then is trigger in our mind the exact thing that we don't want to do. that we don't want to say, that we don't want to do, that we don't want to be. And so we automatically go to that thought and create and work on that thought. And, what's interesting is the reason we probably have jinxed things all along, and maybe we consider ourselves a jinx, is because, once again, as soon as we think don't jinx it, we are thinking, of jinxing it. We are thinking of what we don't want or don't have. So I thought that was just really interesting, because I thought, this law of attraction, what would be wrong with the idea of focusing towards positive? And as I always tell my clients, what I ask them to do when we do tapping sessions is, yes, you can think towards the positive, but always listen to the resistance. Always think of the don'ts and the no's, and what we don't want out of it. And try to get past that. Try to tap through that and move through that and get rid of that thought, so that we can focus on the positive, that we can be clear of mind in thinking about what we need to do and say and what we really truly desire in our lives. And I think, as I look at that, I think about how often I have done that in my life. How often I have sabotaged myself by thinking so much about, thinking of an idea and then automatically saying, oh, I just don't have enough money for that. Instead of thinking about, okay, here's the idea. Now I'm going to create the money, or I'm going to create the atmosphere to make this happen. Even if you think this is out there, and I don't really believe that, what is the harm of really focusing towards towards the positive? What is the harm with that? To me, it just makes sense almost to want to focus on that, whether you believe what I'm saying or not. But I think it'd be really interesting is focusing on that. And when you focus on whatever that desire is, focusing on how to get to that. And then just listen for the resistance that's behind it and try to clear that. Don't try to push the resistance down necessarily, but try to look at the resistance and say, okay, that's the way I used to think. That's the way that I used to handle these kind of situations. I'm learning differently, and I'm working on changing that. So thank you for the thought that I'm going to change. I'm going to focus on creating the atmosphere to make that thing that I desire come true. So it's an interesting idea between the idea of jinxing something or being negative about something and the law of attraction, because you want to bring into your life what you desire. And I would bet you that if you looked back in your life and did a 20/20 backwards over your life, I bet you could think of times, even as simple as thinking about somebody and they call. I think I've heard that. It almost becomes cliche sometimes. People have said that to me, well, you know what, now that I think about it, I remember this time when I was thinking about my friend so-and-so, and the next thing I know, the phone rings and it's that person. I don't think that's a coincidence. I really don't. I don't really know if I believe in coincidences. I think we create. And so next time you think about jinxing something, or don't say that because that's not the way we want to go. No, let's say, okay, what did I say that for? And is that really serving me? Let's think again. Let's change how we think. And I'm focusing on the desire that I want. So that's it for this off-the-cuff podcast. I hope in some way this has helped you. I hope that it hasn't thrown you off too much with this idea that might be out there for some of you, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to know more about Abraham Hicks, just all you have to do is Google Abraham Hicks, and I believe it's abrahamhicks.com, and you should be able to find information on that. That concludes this podcast. please leave me a comment or question below. That gives me good direction where to go on future podcasts. I would love to hear your invisible wheelchair stories if you're willing to share it. If you would, go to invisiblewheelchair.com and click on Tell Your Story. I want to remind you that OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is treatable, and I can help you get past OCD. So if you have heard this podcast and others, and you feel like you need further assistance and would like to spend some time with me working through any issues you have, then feel free to book a session at focusedhealthyfamily.com or familyocd.com, or you can call me at 704-562-1630. I also offer $85 off initial discovery session if you mention that you heard it on this podcast. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast and will join me for the next one. Remember to keep tapping, talking, and transcending your life to new heights. Thank you, and have a great day.